I want to talk about EU5, and I'm going to give you some EU4 Saluzzo gameplay to watch in the background, since I'm not allowed to show any EU5 content, obviously. But I want to talk about some major concerns that I have, as well as just my general thoughts after playing the game nearly 300 hours. Those that don't know, I was asked to help with UI feedback. I was told they liked my feedback, and they want to bring me in for another round of playtesting. So I spent 2 weeks trying to help them out with UI focused stuff. That gave me an opportunity to really play the game. And I want to show you guys my experience from start to finish. The beginning of my experience playing EU5 to where we ended up. When I first played EU5, I was horribly overwhelmed and I really hated it. And to be fair, I haven't played a new Paradox game in a long time. So the whole initial learning process is just something that I don't find very fun. It's just really frustrating for a while. And I kind of panicked at the start. I'm like, this is not going to be a good game. This is looking like Victoria 3, like all the bad things were just kind of going through my head. Like I had a moment where I thought I needed to pivot content wise because I'm like, okay, well, the U5 is cooked. I guess I better start playing something else. And as much as you guys might be jealous of me being able to play EU5 for a month before you guys can, I think it is a double edged sword. On one hand, it's really cool that we get the experience EU5 a bit ahead of time. But on the second hand, we get to experience a lot worse version than hopefully you guys will be getting. Things aren't really balanced, things are incomplete. There's a lot of glitches, that sort of thing. So my first impression of EU5 is going to be worse than what the majority of players are going to get to experience. So I think it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Some of my biggest frustrations coming from EU4 was I couldn't figure out how to get a claim for a while. Again, I eventually figured this out was Parliament, but we didn't get a tutorial as content creators. This in the version that we have, there is no tutorial. So it's really hard just to figure everything out on your own. We were given 2 weeks to play originally, and I put about 112 or so hours in, which I'd say is above the norm, but there's definitely people that put upwards of 200 hours. I'd say overall, I could have played more. I just wasn't really enjoying it that much, and I almost felt like I just wanted to wait for a future version to come out. Now, let's move ahead 5 weeks when I was given access again. There had been a good bit of time that had passed, and things were starting to soak in a bit. And so when I got EU5 access for the second time, it was a completely different experience because I knew what I was doing this time. And things were just so much better with this new version that I got. I can't talk about the new version much, but I can tell you that performance was an order of magnitude better. It was way, way better. And I was thinking, honestly, if they can continue to improve on the performance, it's going to be fantastic. I have to tell you guys, playing EU5 the second round, when I launched into the game and saw all these different UI changes they've been working on, I was so happy. I was like, oh my gosh, Paradox has been cooking and things look beautiful and things feel great. The performance is great. Man, it was just a great experience being back in EU5. It felt so much better. There's better UI. I can't talk about the UI specifically, why it was better, but I could just tell you guys that they are on the right track. So, in short, first 50 hours, miserable. After 200 hours, loved it. Now, that being said, I do have some major concerns that I wanted to talk about. And I know that we're like forbidden to talk about balance. And no, we're not forbidden by Paradox. Just for some reason, people feel like, well, balance is going to be fixed. So we don't talk about it or something like that. I don't know. It's a weird thing. But we're going to talk about balance. And I'm going to give you some context to the nations that I played because that's going to influence my perspective and my opinion. So I'm just going to list off the nations that we played. I played as Brandenburg, Castile, Austria, Hungary, Bohemia, the Ottomans, the Timurids, Venice, Colima, and Puripeka. And I wanted to talk to you about my experience with those nations and just my experience throughout the game, of just how these things felt. I would say in general, I had fulfilled the objectives of my campaign almost every time by the 1400s, meaning that by the time I hit the 1400s, I want to try a new campaign. However, this might be coupled with the idea that I only have maybe a week or two to play all the nations that I want to try. And I didn't even get to play a portion of all the ones I wanted to try, to be honest. I want to play Oman and Muscovy and Korea, just name a few, and Japan. There's just a lot more that I didn't get to play that I wanted to play. Things felt like EU4 in the sense that you reach your major goals within about 100 to 150 years and you're ready to move on to a new campaign. And I'm okay with that, but I don't think it's where we want the game to land. And that comes down a lot to balance. Everything feels like it's too good. And making money is just so easy. Regardless of what nation I played, I felt like I was making at least 100 to 200 gold a month. And it's not ducats, by the way, it's gold. I hope that triggers at least one of you watching. By the 1400s, so about 50 to 60 years into the game, I'm making at least 100 a month to around 300 a month in stronger nations. Meaning as Castile, I'm easily making 300 plus a month, and maybe as Brandenburg, I've reached about 100 to 200 a month. So obviously, depending on how strong of a nation we started as, it's going to influence the outcome of where we're at. However, Money is super, super snowbally, and really, it's just too easy. Now, the biggest offender, of course, I've talked about this, is Parliament and the raised taxes ability, which I think needs to be heavily nerfed. However, in general, making money is simply too easy. Now, I want to talk about the second major problem with balance. We're going to talk about a lot of them. And I understand, yes, things are going to change with balance, but I do want to just talk about them and talk about my experience. So let's just go through it. Antagonism is way too generous. If I wanted to explain antagonism and compare it to AE, I would say that antagonism in current state is like you had a negative 50% AE mod when you load it into the game. And you can take secondary land for only 33% cost more instead of 50% more that it is in EU4. So oftentimes it's really just not that bad to annex people in this way. And I'm going to go through a few examples of things that I thought were kind of ridiculous. For one example, in the game where I was playing as Bohemia and we were doing the whole revoke, I was able to use an Imperial ban CB against the Teutons to fully annex them. You heard that right. A Imperial ban to fully annex the Teutons. And it wasn't even that aggressive. Before we get too much further in the balance discussion, I want to walk you through my different campaigns and give you kind of a brief overview of what they looked like. We'll start with Castile, where my goal was to try out colonization. So my thought process was I'll unify Iberia, so I'll annex Portugal and Aragon, and then I will build my nation a bit and get ready to colonize. And this was super easy. Portugal has no allies, and you're just better than him. So you can basically just go in, take his land, and then you get a Union CB. And the same thing with Aragon. He just has no real strong allies. So those two were just complete pushovers. I was able to either take their land or subjugate them within the first 20 years of the game. So I formed Spain in the first maybe 20 to 30 years of the campaign. Then I just literally sat there and built up 60, 70 years until we hit 1437 and we unlocked exploration. I went to the New World and I started to colonize. And colonization is crazy compared to EU4. Just imagine being able to colonize 40 to 50 provinces at once. And I'm not going to go too much into the mechanics, but it's very, very possible to literally colonize the entire coastline of North America, probably even South America as well. And so no other colonial nation can even contest you. You just get all of the New World for yourself. And I want to bring you to fighting the natives because that was an experience on its own. It's not easy to get a professional army over to the New World because you got to take them over with boats. I attempted to take a large amount of guys over to the Caribbean where we had a colony so I could land there and then we could invade Mexico. And I was met with the Protestant winds. Not really, but the point being is that I lost like half my navy on the journey to the Caribbean. There was some sort of event where the Protestant winds. I don't know. So my army was pretty hurt by the time it got to the New World. And your guys don't replenish unless they're in your homeland. So I just had to send it. Let's just say that I sent a couple thousand guys, maybe the likes of 3,000 guys to invade. And we got absolutely slaughtered by 8,000 levies that these guys popped up. Absolutely slaughtered. So I actually just reloaded that save back 2 years and I'm like, okay, let's try this again, but let's bring triple the amount of troops. And I'll tell you, it worked, but they had like 9 forts. So I pretty much had to barrage everything. And that's a whole different topic that I want to talk about balance-wise in a bit. But man, it was just so brutal. I had to end the war because I lost so many men assaulting, and you just don't replenish men ever. Even when I won the war, and I core up the provinces, took a couple of provinces. You guys still don't replenish there because you don't have the right buildings. And so you guys literally just don't replenish unless you go back to Spain. And good luck with that. You're going to lose more men probably trying to go back to Spain. So what was my TLDR of colonization? Definitely not worth. Just attack France instead. Let's move on to the main campaign we played, where we played as Austria. And I wanted the chance to experience into the late game. So I ended up playing until about 1760. And I want to talk about the different things that I really liked or didn't like. First, we'll talk about forming Germany in 1499. To be honest, this is too fast. It feels like I reached my objectives and I was ready to wrap up the campaign. In reality, I probably would have just wrapped up the campaign but I would just wanted to see the rest of the game, so I kept going, right? Like I've kind of reached my goals. It's 1499. I'm ready to move on. But I pushed through, and I have to say, I loved the religious turmoil disaster and the court and country disasters in the Age of Reformation and the Age of Absolutism. Absolutely fantastic. I won't go into those too much, but just to say that I think you guys are going to love them. But the late game goes crazy. I'm not going to get into the details. I want to explain to you how the late game feels. Imagine you have 90 admin efficiency, 90 CCR, and 90% problem source per cost. I think that'll give you an idea of how it felt to play late game EU5. Again, not going into the details because I'm sure a lot of this will change with balance, but modifier stacking, I can tell you, is very easy and more real and accessible than it is in EU4. In general, the game is just easier than EU4 in the versions that I played, which I don't necessarily like, but that's just what it is for now, right? Like, I get it. It's an early access build. Maybe it's intentionally made easy so people can get to experience mechanics and give feedback. I'm not really sure. I'm not a developer, but I would like to see the balance severely adjusted. Not just like a little tweaks, but like severely, severely adjusted, right? Okay, so we talked about two of our campaigns, and so let's get through the rest of them. Venice, I didn't really play a lot of Venice. I played about 20 to 30 years, and I kind of got distracted with the Timurids, so I won't even count them as really playing them too much. Bohemia was an interesting one. I wanted to try revoking the privilege type of thing or forming the HRE because I haven't really touched that mechanic yet in the game. So I thought to try Austria, but then I realized that Bohemia is basically just better Austria in that time period. So I tried Bohemia. Without getting into too much details, Bohemia doesn't start as the emperor, but it's very easy to get the emperorship. You're basically Austria, as I said. Now, my first time playing Bohemia, I can tell you that I formed the HRE in 1410. So you can see that we're not even close as far as balance goes. And this is the first time that I tried to do this. I'm sure I could have formed HRE in the 1300s if I knew what I was doing. But again, this is my first time even playing with these mechanics. But just to kind of show you guys how far off the mark that is from what I would expect it wants to land, maybe that you could form the HRE in like the late 1600s, something like that. I don't know. Funny enough, I actually tried this again as Brandenburg later on, and I think I got the emperorship in like 1470, and I could have revoked by like 1500 without even doing anything. Like just literally sit there, turn off your army, and save money, and then just, yeah, you can just get the whole HRE in like 20, 30, 40 years without doing a single thing. Obviously, that's a major balance issue. It's fine. But again, that campaign is over in 1410. I tried Hungary for a bit. The problem with Hungary, to me, they didn't feel like they had an end goal to me. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, when I played other nations, let's say I played as Austria or I played as Brandenburg, I had goals that felt good, like forming into Germany or forming into Prussia. But when you start as Hungary, that's it. You're already at your end game scenario. And this feels a lot worse to me because it feels like I don't have a good objective to go for. Where I did play Hungary a little bit, it just felt like there was no objective for me to go for. And it just didn't feel right. I don't know how else to explain it. Same thing with like a France. Like Castile felt a bit better because you can form into Spain. But again, that was accomplished so early that it became kind of an issue. And I'm just giving you my personal experience, guys, of course. I'm a goal-oriented person as an individual, so for me, goals are really important. So let's talk about the Ottomans. The Ottomans were actually probably my hardest campaign. I had to restart a few times because the Ottomans work in a really interesting way where they have a very unique scenario. The way the Ottomans work, more or less, is that you're a Beylik and you're trying to be the strongest Beylik. And the strongest current Beylik has the ability to get claims. So if you aren't being aggressive enough and someone else gets more provinces than you can no longer really interact with getting claims. And so it's kind of like a snowball effect. So now you can't get claims as easy, and you're going to be stuck not being able to get claims. So I kind of had to restart a couple times to get the really, really early aggression of the Ottomans that was required to stay the number one Beylik. And that brings me to the situations mechanic. So the Ottomans have these situation mechanics. To me, I would say this feels like a mini mission tree. It feels great to interact with. Situations. As the Ottomans, you have like 5 interactions you can do that are really good. You can make, a certain type of subject, or you can get a claim, or you can interact with Byzantium and try to get some stuff out of them. Maybe they want a truce in exchange for money. It almost feels like a mission tree. The Timurids have a similar thing. It feels so good. Now, the issue, though, I have with situations is that it feels worse to play nations that don't have situations. Like after playing the Ottomans and the Timurids, I'm like, man, I love these situations. And then you play someone like Hungary who's like, there's no situation, there's no goal. It just doesn't feel good. It's almost as if the game is power creeping itself. These situations feel fantastic, but they're only on a couple nations. So I only want to play those nations because they feel better. And yes, I did mention the Timurids, so let's go ahead, dive into that. The Timurids were my favorite campaign once I figured it all out. And I have to say, it's pretty boring of a start. You literally play as a subject nation of Chagatai and sit there for like 15 to 20 years while you wait for your ruler to come of age. And then that ruler basically helps form into the Timurids. And the Timurids have a situation, and the Timurids are just like insanely broken, and they're going to get nerfed for sure. And I won't go into the gameplay too much, but it was just so fun to be like a god among men, having like this giga general who made your army insane. And just the horde mechanics were really fun. And that's a discussion of its own. Like, how are you going to balance horde mechanics? I don't know. Essentially, hordes work like synthetics of EU4, which is like a Easter egg really broken nation where basically if you occupy a province, you take control of that province immediately. And this works with regional capitals. So let's say that you take a regional capital. Well, now you just immediately gain occupancy of 5 provinces. I'm going to tell you my funny experience, kind of my trick to playing the hordes, which was really, really freaking cheesy, by the way. As I conquered land, I would just raise levies in every province, and then I'd have those levies carpet siege to the extent where I had over 100 stacks of small little stacks carpet sieging, and the AI just couldn't keep up. I literally auto sieged the Golden Horde in about a year and took their entire land in a year with auto siege and a billion stacks. And then it's just like a snowball effect. Now I'm getting all those Golden Horde provinces and I'm raising levies there, and those new levies are going to carpet siege. And it just creates this like cycle of, oh my goodness, this is broken. You literally don't get antagonism. Hordes are just broken. I'd ask Paradox, like, what's the plan with hordes? How are you going to assign antagonism when you delete a nation when you're at war with them? You don't ever go to a peace deal. You can just, you take their land by occupying the province. I genuinely don't know how they're going to balance that. But yes, I conquered a ridiculous amount of land in a very short time frame. I won't get too much into the balance of that, but obviously it's way too overpowered. I think pre 1400 world conquest is definitely possible with a horde, especially the Timurids. That's not that important for this discussion or balanced discussion, whatever, right? But I think it's going to be drastically updated. That being said, I do want to circle back to that whole situations issue. After I played the Ottomans and the Timurids, I played with these really fun situations. And by the way, there's tons of flavor for the Timurids. The Timurids are just probably the best nation I played. They're just packed with flavor. They have a situation that makes them really fun. They have a lot of options with the situation to get things like claims and other goodies. And they have just tons of flavor when they conquer certain lands. Like you push it into the Ottomans' land, you get tons of claims and different flavor events you could pick from. Just peak gameplay. Yes, it needs to be reined in, but the problem with how good the Timurids felt is that it made playing other nations not feel as good. I'm not saying I wouldn't play other nations. I'm just telling you guys, like, just imagine the feeling of playing someone with a really strong mission tree in EU4 and then playing someone with a generic mission tree after that. It's still playable and fun. It's just not as good as it used to feel because you've experienced this situation that was really fun and felt so good. And then you're just playing a nation that really doesn't have that. It's almost like a way of power creep. I don't know how to explain it other than that. But I genuinely thought the Timurids was so fun. Yes, it needs to be reined in. Yes, there's some balance issues, but it was just, I loved it. It was really fun. It was EU4. It just felt right. To give you guys some more context, though, after I played 200 hours, the last 100 hours were lovely. I got to the point where I would launch a game. I knew exactly what estates I would want. I knew exactly what techs I was going to take. You get to that point where things are just very familiar. You going in, you're like, I'm going to pick these estates every game. I'm going to push towards these values. I started to have a very scripted way of playing the game, just like in EU4. When you start up, you're like, I want these estates. On that topic, estate templates, Paradox, think about it. And let's briefly talk about the last two nations I played, Pekka and Klima. These guys played pretty similarly, but they felt really good to play. I'm not going to lie, because you start in a situation where you're just not that strong. You don't have access to the same resources that Europe has, and it just felt like it would have been a really long campaign that would have been really fun. Funny enough, like it probably would have been a campaign that I could see myself playing into the later part of the game because it's so challenging to overcome some major obstacles like the Europeans arriving. Anyhow, we don't need to talk about that too much, but W for the natives being randomly really fun. One major issue I have is that there is an ability to call an ally into a war with favors, except it's based on CK3, I believe, and it's not like they have a choice. You call them in for 10 favors and they have to go. And this works for rebellions. Imagine being able to call Bohemia, but like Giga Bohemia, into any rebellion that you have. And you can kind of see the issue, right? Like every single war in the game, I can call in Bohemia, and it's easy every single time. All you gotta do is ally to someone strong, and they have no choice. I think this is a major issue. This isn't just a balance issue, but a mechanic issue, because it's a mechanic I think that shouldn't exist. I also think getting allies to such big nations really doesn't make sense. If I'm Brandenburg and I'm voting for Bohemia so he likes me and I'm able to get alliance with him, I don't think it's reasonable for him to want to help me with every single situation, every war, every rebellion that I have. In fact, I think it would make sense that a kingdom shouldn't want to ally to a duchy. I don't think it's a duchy in EU5, but you get the point. The lower status than kingdom. I feel like they shouldn't even want to ally someone that weak. It would make a lot more sense if I was allied to similar strength nations. It's way too easy to get your allies to carry you through any problems. And I want to talk about a military balance issue now. I'll talk about my experience with Brandenburg to give you some context here. Your earliest form of a standing army, you're going to need to build manpower buildings, and these can only be built in cities. As a player, what I like to do is just build a ridiculous amount of cities, and then you get a ridiculous amount of manpower buildings. And this results in you having the largest army as Brandenburg in the 1400s, because the AI doesn't really understand that mechanically, right? They're not going to go and build a ton of cities around their capital that have high control and then spam manpower buildings. They just don't work that way. So it's like your armies are so much stronger than the AI. And I think that's like a fundamental issue. It's almost like these systems are too complex for the AI to understand how to compete with you. And that brings us to the AI in general. The AI doesn't ever expand. And my thought about this is it's maybe due to the lack of claims because they don't think like a player, like, oh, I'm going to use Parliament to get claims. I doubt the AI does that. And I'm talking like the AI doesn't do anything unless it has a claim. Like, for example, I've seen Castile not kill Granada by the 1700s. That's an issue. And I have never in 300 hours seen the Ottomans attack Byzantium. So that being said, the AI is extremely lacking in some areas. I do think it's actually pretty good in combat, the AI. But let's talk about things I don't like about combat, because that is a topic of its own. Now, imagine EU5 is 4 times as large as EU4. To give you an example of what I mean, fighting Bulgaria feels like fighting France in EU4. Fighting France in EU5 feels like, I don't even know, fighting all of Germany. There's so many forts. So many forts. And I'll tell you really the meta I developed, and it's definitely not healthy. It's just kind of one of those things that you adapt, for lack of a better word. The meta when I played was to build straight infantry because those can assault. And there's 8 trillion forts everywhere, and you need to assault a ridiculous amount. And assaulting's free. You don't need cannons to assault. You don't need a breach. You just assault. And this is one of the best things to do with levies. So essentially, you use your standing army to fight enemy troops, and then you use your levies that are expendable to assault forts. And if they die, no big deal. Get more of them. But yes, I'm talking literally up into the 1700s. I would only build infantry because infantry are also ridiculously more effective cost-wise. Like ridiculously more effective cost-wise. Let me give you an example because I actually calculated this. We're going to use a comparison here. The 1400 infantry unit has 200 troops and costs about 30 gold versus the earliest cannons cost 150. So if you wanted a +1 bonus against the fort, you need 1,000 cannons. You get 50 per stack. So imagine paying 150 gold 20 times because you need 1,000 guys. So it's going to cost you 3,000 gold. So normal troops cost 30. So if we take 3,000 divided by 30, we get 100. So having 1 stack of cannons is equivalent to having 20,000 infantry. Do you guys see how ridiculous this is? And really, it's like that with horses too. They're just so much more expensive. It's never worth it to build anything with infantry. And I don't even know what the point of the supply troops are. Like, it's so rare that you would ever want the supply caravans. The only reason you ever want that is if they somehow cut off your food supply. But I guess to be fair, I probably don't need them because I'm assaulting everything and I don't really run out of food because I'm assaulting everything. And assaulting everything's free, which I think is a fundamental problem. But also the amount of forts in the game is a fundamental problem. And it's just tough because it's like a problem I don't really know the solution to because you've added so many more provinces that it's like, what do you do about that? Just imagine there's 4 times as many provinces. Well, there's going to be 4 times as many forts. So that's kind of like the fundamental issue. And then it's just like, it's so painful to siege things. I guess on the other side of things, though, you get tons of war score from battles, so you don't have to siege as much. But you can't take land unless you occupy it. So just take all those things together. And yeah, combat can be very frustrating. And just the levy spam is really, really bad, I think. Like basically, let's say that you wipe out 3,000 levies. Well, they can just pop up another 3,000 levies. They have full morale and ready to fight it instantaneously. It's not even that they're that strong. It's more of just that it's a nuisance because it's the AI. They're probably going to try to avoid you. But thank goodness for the mechanics in EU5 that allow you to track down armies. That feels so good. I love stuff like that. There's just so many good things about EU5. I really do think EU5 has insane potential, but just there's so many things that need adjusting, right? Like, for example, it's insanely easy to get an ally to betray another ally, like in a war. Like, I could go to war with anybody and just offer them some gold as a secondary target to leave, basically every time. Like, oh, you're fighting some minor nation, but they're allied to Bohemia. Well, just give Bohemia some money, and then you can go on with your murder of that small nation. But let's wrap up this video. It's kind of a rant, I know. U5 is extremely fun. It has a lot of potential, but there's some major balance issues and honestly some mechanics issues should be discussed. The main ones we covered today are situations feel like a sort of power creep or sort of these nations feel better than other nations because they have these situations that feel really good. Other nations that don't have these don't feel as good. Nations that start as an endgame tag that don't have any formable goals to go towards don't feel as good as ones that do. Like I would rather play Oman because they have a formable than Hungary or France because they don't really have a goal to work for, and I'm a goal-oriented person. We talked about the AI and how I don't know if they're going to be able to keep up with the player with how complex the mechanics of the game are. And that is a major concern for me. Talked about the economy and how it's so easy to scale up your economy super fast. And just in general, the game itself is so easy, too easy. Antagonism is inexistent. I've related this to having a 50% aggressive extension mod at the start. And I did want to talk about one thing I just think is really, really hard. I know I said I was going to wrap up this video, but there's one more topic I wanted to talk about. In fact, there's just a lot of things to talk about. I feel as the population doesn't really matter, and I think it should matter more. And the Black Death doesn't really matter. I'll tell you that every single game, my nation comes out of the Black Death stronger than it was going into it. I make more money, I have a bigger army, that sort of thing. Every single time. I feel like you can just ignore the Black Death and it's not really something that even you care about. Oh, some number at the top middle of your screen went down. Well, just go conquer some neighbors and you'll get it back. It doesn't really matter that much. So yes, I think the Black Death should be more punishing. I want to feel like it's crippling my nation and it's hard to recover from. It doesn't feel like that. The only thing the Black Death really does is close the trade markets for a while. That's the only reason that makes it hurt. Other than that, I don't even really notice it. Other than there's some pop-ups I have to deal with, right? Like, other than that, it doesn't really feel impactful. And that's probably part of the issue that causes the game to snowball so hard, right? The Black Death's so easy to deal with, doesn't slow you down that much, and you're just like going and going. But one other fundamental issue is the start date. When I'm in this gameplay loop of I finish my goals by 1450, it's frustrating because I don't really like levy gameplay. And unfortunately, that's the majority that I get to play with because my campaigns end by the 1400s. And so half my campaigns I'm playing with levies, and levies are just so one dimensional to me. It's just like, oh, do you have more than them or do you not have more than them? They're just levies. Like I kind of just feel like that's it. And as the player, are you overpowered because you can use Parliament to request additional levies? Like, is the AI even capable of matching that? Again, it goes back to my, can the AI keep up with the complex mechanics that you deal with? I want to say I covered a majority of the topics. I know this has been a bit of a rant, but I want to end on a bit of a positive note and say I really do love the building system. I didn't at first, but it really grew on me. Money in EU5 is definitely a lot different. It feels very inflated. Like you make a lot more money, but everything costs a lot more money, which is weird because you still cap at the same money. Actually, you don't. It's actually 999K instead of 1000K. How dare you, Paradox? It has to be 1000K, not 999. I don't even know how it's playable, but that rant aside, I do feel like the building system feels really good. You have a lot of things you want. You only have so much money to. And funny enough, before I knew about the Parliament action to raise taxes, the game felt so much more balanced. Like it was actually hard to find the right balance of like, paying for stability versus paying for your armies. Like economy actually felt so good without Parliament. Like, man, I really wish I could just try EU5 without Parliament. I know you guys know beating the dead horse that I don't like Parliament, but I'm just like genuinely curious. Like, well, what if you could fabricate claims? Well, that would be more balanced and it would take longer. And then what if you couldn't raise taxes, right? Like, it just feels like the game would be so much more balanced without it. Like, all the broken parts of EU5 come from Parliament. But we were talking about positive things, remember? So building system's awesome. I love that you can say build libraries. Like, that's a choice you can make. Or you can build military buildings, or you can build production buildings. There's so many different buildings. At first, this was way overwhelming, but it's one of those things that once you figure it out, you're glad it's there. I honestly really love the economy. Economy feels great. It's just too easy at the moment. It just needs a little bit of love, like some balance. I think the economy is actually probably one of the closest mechanics to being ready to release than anything else. But also, I don't like that keeping the clergy happy is so impactful because it infects your research speed. So basically, you have to keep the clergy happy, and it's like 10 times more important than keeping anyone else happy. That and the peasants. Basically, keep the peasants and the clergy happy, F the burghers and the nobility. Who cares about them? And that's how you play EU5. I don't think that the research thing should be so strong. Keeping the clergy happy is just literally like 10 times more important than anyone else because it's research speed. But yes, I've ranted a lot. This video is all over the place. I apologize. But Paradox, if you're out there, if you're listening, I think things need to be way more difficult. And I'm talking maybe 3 times as difficult. Money needs to be nerfed 300%. Expansion needs to be nerfed 300%. You get the point. You get what I'm saying. It's not even close to where it should be. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoy this one and have a good one.